I did 4 deployments to Iraq. My first deployment, I was 21 years old. It's even related over into multifamily because you're constantly on the go. You're on a standby, on call. If you have an interest, reach out to those that are already in that position. Find a mentor. And that's one thing that I learned from the Rich Dad, Poor Dad program is having a mentor is essential. It is key. The thing with our industry is that we're not one subject matter expert, right? I love this saying, jack of all trades, the master of none, but I'd rather be the jack of all trades than the master of none, right? I remember the old clip of, I can't remember, I think it was like on Good Morning America. They were like, what is this www.aol? Like, this is a trend. No, like AI is the internet. To me, it's the new internet, right? One big thing that I want to leave off is that, in the multifamily industry, especially from the maintenance perspective,
Jose, I wanted to start by, talking a little bit about who you are, who you are as a person. We chat a lot about who we are as professionals, and that's extremely important. Basically, it comes down to that, but also I want for people to get to know you of who you are as a person. Let's start with the childhood. When you grew up, what did you want to become when you grew up?
great question. I wanted to be a police officer probably when I started growing up, and then I watched Full Metal Jacket, and I seen the dress blues on a Marine, and then I seen Arlie Ermy, and I said that's what I wanted to be. I want to be a Marine. I want to be a drill instructor. It just stuck in my head always. My uncle was in Vietnam. He's a multi-recipient in Purple Heart during the '68 during the Tet Offensive, and so I always had this military mindset, and I always wanted to go to the military. Figured if I didn't stay as a career, then I'd get out and become a police officer. So that was who and what I wanted to be. Kind of, as you go through the chapters of your life, you kind of see some other little things here and there, but that's what stuck, and that's the direction and the path I took as far as going to the military.
Well, I thank you for your service. It's much appreciated. I just interviewed 2 hours ago. I interviewed somebody else that's been in the service. And I learned that a lot of maintenance leaders in multifamily have a military background. And I think I understand why. It's kind of like the discipline, the structure that military gives you. And there's a lot of purpose into, doing maintenance, facilities maintenance. There's a lot of serving out there. So I think there's a lot of commonality. It's part of the mindset on both, right? Do you disagree?
I think you hit it on the head. It's that serving the serving mentality. Those that joined to serve, that's what we did. It's a greater purpose in joining and being a part of something that's greater than ourselves. And when you're in the military, you definitely feel that, especially if you're within my generation of just consistent combat tours. And if you joined from 2000 and on, you knew that you were going into that combat environment. But that was typically the reason majority of all of us joined, to serve and serve our country. And then when you're in theater, you're serving that brother and sister to the left and right of you and making sure that they're getting home as well as yourself.
What did you deploy, Jose?
I did 4 deployments to Iraq. My first deployment, I was 21 years old. It's an interesting story. My wife, who I was dating at the time, we went to the little thing. I told her this story about how I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. Long story short, wasn't able to go. She said, "Why don't you just try one more time?" Dropped her off from this vacation little trip that we did. Went straight to the MEP station, and I was actually a supervisor at that time. I was 21 years old. I was a service supervisor, an apartment complex. I've been doing apartments since 2000, 2001. Dropped her off, went straight to the recruiting station. Look, you don't have to sell me. I was supposed to go when I was 18, but I didn't make it. And I signed up. I called my manager at the time, and I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be in starting Thursday." And this was on a Wednesday. And she says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I just signed up. I'm leaving Monday." I left to the Marine Corps in July 2003, and then landed up joining the Marine Corps, going in. And then by August of 2004, I was in Iraq. Did a 6 month tour there, came back. We did the push for Fallujah. This year was his 20th year anniversary. It was a big eye opener. And I was a truck driver. I hated driving trucks, but I loved gunning. So when you're a truck driver, you kind of sit around and wait. And I took what I learned when I would go out on missions, we'd build what's called forward operating bases. So we had to take that supplies out there. Well, I hated sitting around and being stagnant. So I, used what I learned in those 3 years of being in multifamily, and I took it and helping build huts, Quonset huts, running electrical, running HVAC, hooking up gauges, charging units, doing installs on mini splits and everything of that things of that nature. And then just kind of continued in my 8 years while I was in the Marine Corps. Just did additional multiple deployments. I did three more after that as well.
What drove you? What pushed you towards, that type of dedication to like go back over and over again? That's not the most friendliest environment. I will say that probably is hellish in many ways.
So I think it was one being that servant mindset, right, and then being a part of something greater than ourselves. When you're in that environment, you go through the challenges, the different things that you go through, and at a young age, it's instilled in you. It's literally ingrained in you, and it just becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of everything that you're a part of. Even my family, my kids. During that time frame, my wife, we had three children while I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. She became a part of that. It was just something about it, that you just became a part of something that was greater than yourself, but even your family does. So the support that I get from my family as well, the wife that I've had, for 21 years, she's just always been there and supporting. And I think it's even related over into multifamily because you're constantly on the go, you're on a standby, on call. And so I've always been blessed where she always understood, like, hey, you got to go take care of this call or whatever the case may be. But what drives, I think, that mindset is just they become family. Those brothers and sisters that you're working with, you become family. You're with them more than you are with your own family. And so that's what really drives that, and making sure again that if we are deploying, we're going into theater, we're going to make it back out all together.
Jose Murillo, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And everyone, if you started watching this episode, Jose is our special guest today. Jose is Regional Maintenance Manager with Greystar. I also want to thank our sponsors from Appwork and Kairos for making this broadcast possible. Jose, going back to when you returned from Iraq, what was the path that you followed?
So, I mean, I get back from Iraq, you kind of go through your workups. You're back depending on how you usually get about a 6 month where you stay back. We were back for 6 months, went back out, did another 7 month deployment, came back, had some time where I stayed. I decided to reenlist. I was actually going to get out and become a police officer in Albuquerque, and just didn't go that route. They landed up doing bonuses. They had a $15,000 sign on reenlistment bonus. My wife still was enjoying it. At that time, we had two kids. I had a toddler and then an infant at the time. I put in orders, landed up going to San Diego, went to the 3rd Marine Air Wing, and landed up going out there and then did two more tours out there. One was a 13-month tour, which was my last tour. Got back in 2009. Still was enjoying it, loving it. Things in the area that I wanted, like I said, I wanted to be a drill instructor. So I wanted to go and become a drill instructor. That was the direction I was going. I did everything in the career path that they told me to do. Unfortunately, there's what we call needs of the core. And at that time and point when I was trying to become a drill instructor, I was a sergeant at the time, and I'd been in already for nearly 8 years. And they stopped accepting sergeants because stuff was going on. They switched over some stuff. Again, like I said, needs of the core. Shift on orders were going to change. And so still was planning to get in, but I just something wasn't sitting right. And I landed up getting orders to go back to North Carolina. I went to go talk with one of the leadership, with the leadership there, and told them I was going to be inbound in July. And they just said, when did you get back? I told them 2009. And this was 2010 timeframe, towards tail end, and let them know, when I'd gotten back. And they said, well, don't unpack because we need to send you to Afghanistan. They had lost three sergeants out there and they needed to replace them. So I just wanted a little bit of break in time. So I started looking around, and I started looking at different federal jobs and landed up finding a federal job with the Bureau of Land Management in the state of New Mexico, up in northern New Mexico. And it was a federal job, and I prayed about it, landed up things working, and I landed up getting out thinking I was just going to roll over into a federal job. And 2011, budget cuts during that era, And so the job I applied for and I did get at the time landed up getting cut. So I was out of the Marine Corps in 2011. Enjoyed a little bit, almost like a sabbatical, and I was kind of stressing because I didn't know what to do, and I wasn't sure. I was kind of still wanting to go back to the Marine Corps, and I started shopping around, or I shouldn't say shopping around, but looking for jobs, and we kind of revert back to what you're comfortable in, and I knew maintenance, and I felt comfortable in maintenance, and that's how I ended up getting back to maintenance. I actually applied though to become an assistant manager because I wanted to go over to the office side and learn about leasing and investing and things of that nature. The company at the time, though, felt that I'd be more suitable and a better asset going back to the maintenance. And so I landed up going to the maintenance. And I've been out of the maintenance game for 8 years. I didn't feel too comfortable with it, but you overcome and you adapt and you just take what's hold. And that's what I landed up doing. And I landed up coming back to into the maintenance field, and that's where 2011 I was back in the maintenance game. A lot had changed from 2003 to 2011, and it was a big learning curve for sure. But I had some great guys that now actually work for Greystar and in my region, and we used to work hand in hand together. And what's even interesting is one of the guys, Fernando, who used to help me a lot trying to get back in and refreshed and learn new things and being a maintenance. His son's in it. And I remember when his son was, this little kid, and now his son's a supervisor. So it's a career. I learned that, as I got back in, and I left again too. I left the multifamily and went to the union side. Thought, well, maybe I'll try my hand in the trades, and thought about maybe opening up my own HVAC business once I started getting my journeyman's license and things like that figured out. And again, lo and behold, it sucks you back in, and I'm glad it has. I'm truly glad that it has. And so that was essentially my stint in breaking time from 2003 to 2011, and then how I came back into it. And then I've just kind of worked myself up into the position I'm at now.
Was it easier for you to transition back into the civilian life?
It was It was really hard. You go from being a senior sergeant, a platoon sergeant in charge of 60 guys in a combat environment, or even a section chief, or the different roles that I've had through all these areas. And it wasn't. It was a little bit different. It was humbling. I actually used to have some of my Marines that would call me and say, "Hey, Sergeant Murillo, what are you doing?" I'd tell them like, "Hey, you want to know what I'm doing right now? I'm picking up dog poop." And as a sergeant in the Marine Corps, it's something that you're like, wait, what? And so it was humbling, but it was needed. And I'm glad, it was a good learning experience because there's nothing beneath, myself or what I'm going to do and what I expect us to do. These are what comes with that role, but it's that servant mentality that I think is ingrained in many of us.
What was the year that you made the step up from being over one site versus being over multiple sites in multifamily?
So that would be 2013, 2014 timeframe is when I had one property, and my manager called me in with her regional, or our regional at the time, and they proposed, would you be interested, because it was two communities just a block away. I kind of was taken back because I'd only been on that property for probably a year and a half. I have a highly respect for that manager that I had at that time. I used to even joke with her. I said, there was a pre-life, you probably were a Marine. I said, she just me and her really meshed very well and had a great team. And so, yeah, so 2013, 2014 is when I started to do some multi-siding.
What are some things that I'll say key experiences and decisions that actually propel you towards multi-site and becoming a corporate leader?
Oh, well, going into a corporate, you're saying into the corporate team or multi-siding, like
I skipped a step from multi-site, right, from two properties. What was next after that?
next after that was just going into a larger community, probably overseeing properties that were 500 plus, getting into that range. That right in between there, I had left and landed up going to the union and working for a trades company. But shortly lived and came back to the apartments, which I was very thankful for. And that's where I landed up going into a college type community, 500 plus units. And then I also floated as well and assisted and became a senior maintenance manager, which at the time was Alliance when I was with Alliance.
And what was next after that?
Next after that, I kind of bounced around in a sense where I shouldn't say bounce around, but I guess it's the best way I could put it. I landed up getting other job offers from managers that I had worked with for before. I landed up going to Olympus, worked for Olympus for a couple of years, or year and a half or so. That's where my mind, I guess my mindset really started changing. I started listening to a lot of different podcasts about investing and really just diving in and learning more about the apartment industry, not realizing the opportunities that I had. When I went over to Olympus, I ended up becoming a training ambassador for them. They would fly me to California. I would go to Arizona, Texas, help in training, which they called a training ambassador. Was helping in and train new supervisors or supervisors that were new to Olympus, and they had a training program that we abided by and kind of a career path and a path that you would follow. And so be guiding and advising in those areas. And I did that for a while. And then I left there to go work with another manager who had reached out to me. But during my time at Olympus, again, like I said, I started really getting into investing. I started opened up my own online business and wholesaling and things of that nature. I was wholesaling wood watches and wood sunglasses and kind of a drop shipping company. I landed up getting to meet one of the owners to Olympus, and it was a huge eye opener. I went on a couple of due diligences with him and his acquisitions team, and it made me really want to get into investing more. And from then, I landed up also investing into Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad program. And I landed up wholesaling houses right prior to the pandemic and did a few deals, some good deals. We were profitable in that first year. We did really well. And then the pandemic hit. And that really just shifted the market from my wholesaling on houses, the market, then also, of course, with bringing in materials or my wood watches, sunglasses, things of that nature, with drop shipping and bringing in our items out of China and other places. So kind of dabbled in a lot of different areas, doing a little bit of entrepreneurial on the side and doing side hustles. From there, landed up going over to Sentinel. I left Olympus because I thought I was going to go and open up my wholesaling business. But again, like I said, pandemic unfortunately happened, and from there I got reached out again from another manager, and it was an active adult community. Went over there, landed up there, and then found out that my predecessor was retiring. I went on ahead and put my name in the hat to apply for the regional maintenance position, which was 3 years ago, and then landed up getting promoted.
What do you think made you get promoted? I'm sure that you weren't the only candidate that your company was looking at the time.
It's kind of an interesting with that because I was with what we called the owned asset side for Greystar, different areas, and I wasn't on the conventional side at that time, and own assets was new to me. Active adult was new to me, so I was learning on those areas. So I'll be honest, I when I put my name in the hat, I really didn't expect, like you said, because there was going to be multiples that have been on the conventional side. When I had my interview with my director, she was looking for some training, some other ideas, different things, and I believe just within experience, with the experience that I've had in the background, some of my military background, what she was envisioning and looking for. And I kind of just told her what I'm envisioning for the future, what I want to do, what the things that I want to bring to the table. And I think that was a big part of that. And just the experience as well in this time frame, but not just as well. I think just the experience within probably my last 20 years, where you go back all the way to 2001 and up.
You have an amazing story, an amazing career. There's many out there site level, service supervisors that are looking up to you, to someone like you. They want to become Jose one day. What are some pieces of advice that you have for them, Jose?
Is go for it. Don't hold back. If you have an interest, reach out to those that are already in that position. Find a mentor. That is the base thing. That's one thing that I learned from the Rich Dad Poor Dad program is having a mentor is essential. It is key. You're going to learn from their experience. You're going to learn from their mistakes. They're also going to guide and advise you on what directions to take, what paths in education and things of that nature. And then also invest in yourself. That's the biggest thing. If you're wanting to make this a career, invest in yourself, find out about, what certifications you can get, what other teaching platforms or instructor proctor certifications can you get. I wish I had known that, honestly, probably at least 10 years ago. Had I known that I could have just applied myself to becoming a CPO instructor, and knew the route to take, or becoming an EPA proctor, knowing that route to take, I would have probably, I think, maybe advanced a little bit quicker and further. I just didn't know that path. And the only way you're going to know those paths is by picking people's brains. Don't be shy. Be that annoying little nephew that I was, asking why this, why that. You'll get those answers and you're going to learn. So if you have an interest, definitely just research it and reach out to those that are in those positions. If you feel that, hey, I want to go into that regional maintenance manager position or a director of maintenance, or you want to go towards construction management, reach out to those that are in those positions already. That's probably going to be the first thing that I would advise and guide somebody to do.
How many communities you overseeing now, Jose?
So in New Mexico right now, we've just had some transitioning out. We had pretty much 54. Now I'm at, I think, 49 to 48 with development.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
This first customer where we installed this solution for, we installed on January 4th this year. And within like 3 weeks, the temperatures of the attic had gotten below 40, immediately sent a notification to the chief building engineer. They saw that the temperatures that night, according to the weather forecast, were going to drop into the 20s, low 20s. Well, sure enough, the ambient sensor could tell that the attic was dropping very fast, like within hours, down to 32 degrees. And that night it had gotten down to 20 degrees. Well, luckily for them, they went on fire watch. Once they saw the temperatures were approaching freezing, they could drain the lines of the system. And that way there was no risk to the asset. And they just had to pay for a little bit of overtime for somebody to walk the building every 45 minutes. In the morning, when the temperatures start to rise, they could turn the system back on and go back off of fire watch, right? This happened multiple nights in a row. And one of the nights, they actually caught a crack in one of the lines, the leak sensor. They were able to detect that there was a small crack in one of the lines from it just being an old line. And they only had to pay $3,000 for a specialized plumber to come and fix that line, but they didn't have any damage. Last year, over $300,000 worth of damage because of the apartments flooding. Same building, same issue. The following year, zero water damage. And the only difference was they knew what the temperature of the pipes were. And that's it, right? Like once you know, then you can act and be responsible.
What are some things that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started the job, the regional job, and you didn't? You thought they weren't so. Like you thought they were like different than what you know today.
Gosh, it's a good question. It's all and a hard one at that. I think wish I knew kind of more of a direction, or there was more of a more career path. I think, or not. I shouldn't say career path, but kind of an area of like areas like if you had somewhere that you can go to, right? I mean, we have SOPs, we have a lot of these things, but they're very broad. And I think it's kind of hard because you have to kind of keep them broad because I'm in the state of New Mexico. The direction and areas that I might take in the state of New Mexico may be totally different as to what Nevada or Arizona might do, or Texas, right? We have to go off of local municipalities and things of that nature. So really preparing, I think, is something that I probably should have done in certain areas. And had I done the research, reached out, looked for mentors, I think I would have had some of those answers. But you kind of sometimes learn the hard way, or it's trial by fire in some cases. I don't know if that's answering your question as best as I can, but it makes it a little bit hard, though, I feel, because, again, like I said, going back, local municipalities, states, codes are different, would be an example. where we find out, Arizona follows the NFPA, where the state of New Mexico follows the IFC. And within those codes, you have fire codes and things of that nature when it comes to safety. There's going to be some different things that Arizona is doing different than New Mexico, or New Mexico has to do different than Arizona. So it's kind of a hard one to really dissect. But I think for me, what I wish I knew is that I had really reached out to those, knowing I was going into this position more and more often.
If you were to pick the two most important people that made the most difference in your career and your life, who would those people be? Or maybe it's the same person that affected you equally in life and in your career.
Wow, two people. It's a hard one because I've had a lot of impact in my life and in my career. I would just say the leadership that I received from the Marine Corps. I can go on naming names. That I had some really good leadership, especially towards my tail end of career. My last 7 years, probably 6 to 8 year mark, I had some great officers and some really great master gunnery sergeants that I had that were in charge of me, and some first sergeants that were in charge of me, that really I feel helped me in propelling in my career. Would have helped me as well had I stayed in the Marine Corps. I've got some great leadership that, one that I would say would be probably Master Gunner Sergeant Diaz. He just emulated leadership and what you wanted as a leader, from whether it was being stern or being fair across the board, and then just mentoring. He just was really great. And then secondly would be probably my parents. My father, who emulated what you did to work, the work ethic that he just consistently emulated day in and day out, and then the support from my mom. She just constantly was supporting me throughout. As a kid growing up, I was a special ed student, and so all the way probably I think it was from fifth grade all the way really till I graduated. But I'll be honest, in my high school years, I was lazy, and I learned I could work the system. And my mom still would encourage and do as much as she could to support me. When I told her I was going to the Marine Corps, I knew she thought like, whoa, this is a lot. There's the military. She worked for the Air Force. So a lot of people think that, the Marines are just ground pounders and trigger pullers, but there's a lot that comes to it. And I realized that laziness was huge. But again, going back though, those leaders that I had in the Marine Corps, and then my parents.
Most of the people, probably like 99% of the people I talk to in our industry, when I ask them, what's your story? How did you get into multifamily? It's a story of happenstance. It's not something that they pursue purposely. Like they knew that this is a great industry, they wanted to become a part of. It sounds like you're following just like I do. We're following the same path. What do we do? What should we do as an industry to turn the tables on this narrative, to actually make the industry a place where people actually know that our industry exists and they actually have a desire? We make it very desirable for them to become a part of.
That's a great question. And I've watched your podcast, Adrian, and a lot of the responses are great that I hear. And again, like you said, we don't just land up waking up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a maintenance supervisor," right? No, I woke up and I watched a movie, and so that's what I want to do. I want to be a Marine. But in order for us to really reach out and getting out there, I think it's getting out to our communities, going out. I know what we do is we do a lot of outreach. We get with vocational schools or VOTEC schools, local community colleges. We have a great team here that supports us here in New Mexico. Our talent and acquisitions team, they're really great, especially Shelby, who works with us. She's kind of our direct that we use, and she reaches out, connects, again, like I said, to the VOTEC schools, community colleges. We did a couple table sessions at some community colleges, and then also reaching out to the local high schools and letting them know what's out there. I think for us as an industry, though, we need to really take onto social media. And I think I've heard you say it time and time again, right? LinkedIn and getting into social media. Thing is that high schoolers are not jumping onto LinkedIn, right? They're getting onto TikTok. They're getting onto Instagram, getting on. Some of them, I know my kids will probably say, "No, Dad, I don't jump on Facebook," right? I think I even watched on one of your ones you asked, how many of you guys have Facebook, right? majority of the younger demographic probably didn't, right? But I think we need to capitalize on those areas and start reaching out to those that are on TikTok, to the Instagram, and then hopefully channeling them over maybe into LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn probably has a different demographic in areas of that. We're looking for those on-site level, those ones that are just starting out, and to get their attention in those areas. But again, we still are going to reach those. And I think as an industry as a whole, that's what we should capitalize on. I don't see it happening quite yet. I know that there's some red tape as well, depending on what company you're with, and it needs to be monitored, and who's monitoring those Facebook pages and what we're doing. But I think that would be one of the best ways. And then going through YouTube. YouTube is a big one that I know for sure that everybody is jumping on there. How do I fix this? There's a lot of kids that are out there growing up in a single family home, and some of them are having to fix things, right? And they're probably jumping on YouTube. How do I fix this? How do I fix that? And those are the areas I think that we need to capitalize on, and those platforms. And I think if we did that as an industry wide, we really could really elevate, and then again continue doing what we're doing, getting into the VOTEC schools, getting into the community colleges, reaching out to the high schools, the local high schools, and things of that nature, and job fairs.
I love the fact that you are identifying the places where they live, right? I'm going to say quote unquote live, where they virtually live, right? It's not a blanket thing to just blast all over all the platforms and just kind of like see what sticks. I love the fact that you're identifying where your target population demographic lives, and then you're looking at targeting them on that platform right there where they live. So that's fantastic. I'm right there. I've been a big proponent, and I've been speaking up for a long time now that we should take over like through content. We should make content that's specific and that's actually appealing to people that don't know anything about the industry, to get them to become interested in what we do out here, and eventually have them to come over to sign up for multifamily.
No, these other platforms, and again, it's one thing that we've done where we're doing with training. We've signed on to Interplay, and they have the VR headsets, right? I feel like showing like how we train into one of those platforms, right? You got VR, this virtual reality type of learning, and if we deem it towards how we're training and how you can learn these things and then sell it as well, that it's not just a job, it can be a career path. I mean, we've had supervisors here locally from Graystar that were Graystar team members, and now they're our vendors. And it's a career path that can also lead you into an entrepreneurial state, and you can own your own company. Not only that, the amounts of money that you could be saving, or side jobs as well. I've heard you talk about the gig economy and everything as well. And it's a big proponent to it, and just adding it to those platforms that they're majority of the time on, I think it would really help us.
I'm glad you brought up gig economy. I like to hear your take on, do you think that at some point we will bring as an industry some of that gig economy business model into property management? In other words, would it be a platform that actually facilitates property needs, or management company needs, with the available skill that's out there, that doesn't want a full-time commitment, doesn't want to sign up a full-time assignment? They just want to work at various times. It might be 2 days a week, 3 days a week, it might be an evening shift, it might be a morning shift, whatever. Do you think that that's something that's going to happen? Do you see that happening in the future? Again, not as a replacement for a full-time. I personally don't think, but do you see a place for it?
I don't know. I would say that I think there's a place already there with it, right? When you have temp agencies, it's kind of what you're utilizing. A temp agency is that gig, in that sense, a gig economy. To me, the gig economy is me as somebody who, let's just say for me, right? I've had ideas of when I'm cleaning out dryer vents and things like that. I'm like, shoot, man, how much can I charge for this, right? This is what we're getting charged here. I can go ahead and probably charge this on a residential state and move in and start slowly but surely. And I think the gig economy has affected us as a whole. For those that have become wise and said, hey, I can go out and create my own business doing, let's say, air dry cleaning or air vent cleanings and things of that nature. I feel that it's in place already. Like I said, for us as a temp agency, I think temp agencies would kind of essentially fill in that spot. For the future, I think it's kind of hard to really look and see if there's going to be a place. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it, other than in the sense that we're already kind of using a temp agency, right, to fill the gap, because my teams are short handed and I got to fill these gaps. And what do I need to do? I can't support them from any other portfolio or from my floating team that I float, because they're already tapped. We're kind of already using those temp. Now, with a gig economy or the gig asset, though, if there's somebody that has that skill set that you're saying, right, there's those things where if they're not signing on full time, they might work if they're going into, I don't want to say centralized, but something that I do. I float 5 team members under me, and we dispatch them to fill in the gaps. Right. If I've got somebody that's out because their wife, they had a baby that came, right, they get or the great benefits that we provide them. They're out for 4 or 5, 6 weeks, what have you, or I've got somebody that is no longer at that property. I'm able to fill that. That might work because it's a part-time kind of mentality. In that case, I think that it could work in the future in those areas, but it's one of those ones that would be interesting to see how it would play out. But I like the mentality, as long as they have that not mindset, but the skill set, right? The talent, that they're able to go in there, hook up gauges, they're certified, EPA certified, they've got the experience. Yes, it's going to work. But if they're green, I don't feel it would work the best, because we're just going to have them doing porter work.
There's also ways in which you could actually sort them out and determine which ones are the right for the job. For example, having a system on a app on a platform that you rate them. So at the end of the day, when they finish the assignments, the direct supervisor, the site supervisor, could go or should go on an app and just leave a review. And I think that automatically that will just kind of like sort out the good ones from the ones that are not so great. I mean, who in the world is gonna want to hire a technician that it has a 1 star rating? Why would you do that? Kind of you flush out the non-talent, or the non-skilled, or the I guess the unqualified or the lazy ones. You flush them out just by creating that system of rating. If everybody rates them, eventually that's gonna sort out very fast before you know it.
No, and you're right. And the laziness or that work ethic's going to weed themselves out as well. So if you have something implemented in place on how to vet these team members that are coming across, if it's coming from a third party, such as a temp agency, in a sense, is the best way I could refer to it as, they'll weed themselves out. And if you have something to vet that, I think that yes, it would work.
I think you're right about the model that exists with the temp agencies. I think that there's more friction with that because it's not such a frictionless process. The second thing is that you don't really have a way to vet. I obviously worked throughout the years with various companies, and then you would tell someone, a particular company, do not send this employee back here, and then they might send them to a sister property, or they might go to a different temp company and come back with a different temp company. So it seems like, hey, you're back again. You're back again. So those are the things that I think, with technology and very like frictionless, without any type of bother, you could just go on a phone and like just rate that person. You will flush out immediately the ones that are not desirable for your group.
Yeah. And that's key is the vetting process and us vetting out, who's going to be desirable versus the others.
We're facing probably the biggest exodus right now, not just our industry, but the entire society. The boomers are retiring, millions and millions every year. They had a lot of knowledge, they had a lot of legacy knowledge. The Gen Xers are, 50 to 60, pushing 60 years old. I mean, they're not going to be around for too much long doing hands on work. They might be doing something lighter, but for us, for the purposes of serving multifamily, there's not a lot of time left. Once you lose the boomers, once you lose the Gen Xers, who is out there for us to replace the legacy knowledge with? That's the question. How do you think we should approach this? I mean, we're not there yet, but every day that gap widens, right? We not seem to, as an industry, we don't seem to close that gap, to say we did something and we're trying to, like close that gap. It widens every single year, and we're contracting more out. We're losing more and more legacy knowledge. It's not a whole lot left out there.
as a nation as a whole, right, in the 80s and 90s, what did they push us towards? They push us towards technology, which is great, and that's where we're at, the information age, right? And they pushed everybody to look down upon dirty jobs, right? Like the shows, right? Unclogging toilets, doing what we do, getting in, digging ditches. That was looked down upon. We need to reverse that role. As an industry, we need to let everybody know that, hey, this, yeah, okay, it's a dirty job, but there's the few and the proud that are doing this, right? Kind of like the way we are in the Marine Corps, the few, the proud. There's only certain ones that are getting in there and wanting to do these type of things, but we have to really look at the marketing standpoint of it and shift and do opposite of what they did back in the 90s. Because I remember when I went into high school, I signed up for shop, for mechanics. I wanted to learn how to work on cars. Showed up, the budget was cut, we had no teacher. Why? Because they wanted to focus us getting more computer skills. I totally understand the method and why they did it. And then they also pushed us to go to college, which I have another thought as to some of those things. But we've got to reverse that and really start to shift again, going to those platforms where they're living, really, in a sense, romanticizing what's out there, the benefits that coming with this as a career, right? Is, I can't remember what article I was reading or where I had heard it from, but the next millionaires are going to be those that are in the trades. Those HVAC guys, those the electricians. The thing with our industry is that we're not one subject matter expert, right? I love this saying, jack of all trades, the master of none, but I'd rather be the jack of all trades than the master of one, right? And I learned that when I was in the trades and with the union for that short span of time that I was with them, because I seen me where I'm working on an AC, I'm working as an electrician's helper, we're pulling wire and things of that nature. And now they send us out to do a call on an AC call because they thought it was an electric call. And they thought that they had to change out a contactor, a run cap, or what have you. So they sent us out there. Turned out it was no, it was a refrigerant, issue. Well, I told them I can hook it up. I've got gauges, right? So I'm able to do that by us romanticizing that and looking and showing the capabilities and the opportunities that are out there, really in shifting. And it's a big marketing standpoint. It's going to be a huge, but it has to be done from an industry, wide. I mean, all of the different agencies, the national apartment associations, the local apartment associations, us as, whether it's Greystar, Olympus, all these other companies that are out there, we need to really market it and sell it, but we've got to come together as a whole and then also push it over across as a nation, because our nation itself is hurting for tradesmen as well. And we really got to push that across the board.
The centralization is probably the number one buzzword that I'm hearing this year at industry conferences. I don't think it's actually going away, fading away anytime soon. So I'd like to get your thoughts on maintenance centralization.
You know, I know that we're working in centralization, and I know a lot of people are opposed to it. Some are for it. I think it's dependent on how it works. If I'm not losing a team member in order to maintain multiple sites, 5 sites, 6 sites, or what have you, how that looks. It can be challenging, though, I still feel, as well, in dispatching. Technology is going to have to come into play, and using platforms such as like maybe HappyCo or other platforms and things like that where you can dispatch works. But I think it's coming towards the future, but I still prefer, I think, the team site level where you've got, one per 100, you got 300 units, you've got your supervisor, a tech and a porter, or a lead tech and a tech, depending on, the company, how they structure it. I do see it, coming about and happening and being tested, but I feel that, I don't know. Sometimes I feel it's a buzz trend, and it's gonna go for a little while. They're gonna go back to the way we've done the one per 100, or what have you. And it's kind of where I feel. I think centralization works in an aspect. Let's say like what I do here in New Mexico. I've got five team members that float. I've got multiple floating supervisors and then multiple lead techs. I think it works from that to help fill the gaps, fill certain locations that need, help, additional help. I think it will work exceptional from a preventative maintenance standpoint. If you can build say a centralization team for HVAC or skilled specific things where we know is high cost, I think it works there. I think it would work there, and you've got a team that can dispatch out. I think it works very well there. But centralization, going from where we've got a certain team, depending on the size of how many communities they're going out to, there's usually still going to be a little bit of need because we're already in need in general in our industry and shortages that we have on just the community levels that we're running now. I think there's going to be even more shortages, or there is just as much shortages, if not more, when we're running centralization. Again, I haven't ran it and done it myself, so that's just my outside looking in view.
And now a word from Sean Landsberg, co-founder, AppWork.
Most prop tech companies are built this way. We're hiring people that could write code. We're hiring people that are selling the product, but the end user is nowhere in this picture. How's AppWork different than the scenario I just described?
Well, we're fundamentally different because we are the end users ourselves. We, meaning myself. I am an end user of the product. I use the product myself on a daily basis. But something that we're a little bit different than, I always like to look at us as we're almost like a community of people. Us, AppWork, and all of our clients, we leverage everybody's feedback, collective feedback, to help make AppWork the incredible product that it already is, and to help continue improving it. So we're constantly innovating, and we're all of our innovation, all of our pipeline really comes from the feedback and the ideas that our clients are giving us.
You mentioned technology being part of centralization. What are your thoughts on technology? How is it going to affect our trade? And then specifically to AI, there's also like everybody's talking about AI, is trying to look at different angles in which they could actually bring AI into their businesses. How do you think technology, and especially AI, will influence the facility side of our business in the near future?
I think it's going to influence it huge, and I think it's kind of the '90s, late '90s, early 2000s, right? The dot coms. What is? I remember the old clip of, I can't remember. I think it was like on Good Morning America. They were like, "What is this www dot AOL? Like, this is a trend." No, like AI is the internet. To me, it's the new internet, right? It's in that infant stage in a sense where it's just AI. It's another trend, right? But we see where the internet went, right? And they had, you had the pets.com and all them that went under. We're going to have different platforms and different AI platforms, whether you're using chat GPT. I can't remember what the other one is that I've used, and I went back to chat GPT. I think it's huge. I think it's great. I think it's going to help us, especially in the industry, and being able to help us troubleshoot things. I know it helps me on a weekly basis. I'll come across something I've never come across. I'll type something up, I'll look it up, and then I do some little bit of research to see if it's legit, or and we've been doing this long enough that these are the right steps. It seems like this is the next direction that we need to go. Whether you're troubleshooting something from a clogged TXV to a clogged dryer filter, it's giving you those steps. And that, what I love about it is you can tell it to give it sequence of operation. It tells you to start from right here at the thermostat and move yourself forward if it's an electrical issue, or if it's a refrigerant state issue. So I think technology is huge. We're here in New Mexico, and I know some of our other regions are using what's called Interplay, which is amazing. Pushed hard for us to get it, and we started using it this month. We did a soft rollout. We're gonna do a hard rollout going into January, and if they're able to tie it in with AI on, hey, I'm running across this issue, and then give you a video and show you steps and sequence of operation, and I think that it will go that route. I really do. It's going to just enhance our skills and get us better. We can cut the time in half on troubleshooting something, because it's going to lead you into these steps of sequence. I already did this step, I did this step, I did this step, so I could cut that out. And then we also are helping our teams in saving money, because we're not just having parts exchangers and they're just changing part by part, right? They're just, oh well, I'm going to try the sequencer next. No, it's not the sequencer. Okay, well, maybe it's the relay. No, it's not that. They should have just jumped straight over to the first step and looked at their transformer, and that's probably what it was. So I think it's going to help us huge. And I'm a big proponent for technology and helping us within our industry, because I feel it helps in shorten the learning curve. I think I heard you on another podcast about what's called micro learning. And I think that micro learning is huge. And that's what I liked about Interplay is that I have a 2 hour module, but they do it in 5 minute to 10 minute increments. Attention span has changed for us. I know I'm guilty of it, regardless of what generation I fall under. I've constantly wanted to do things, and I do see it across the board in the industry, no matter what the age is, because I do think our phones cause us to do that. Those platforms that we utilize, and our attention span is maybe only 5-10 minutes. So that micro learning helps as well. But again, going back to answer your question, I think it's just going to really enhance us, especially if we invest in it and research and invest ourselves in learning more about it.
Jose, as we're approaching the end of this episode, I want to give you the opportunity to pull your crystal ball and tell me what you see as far as the future, future trends in an industry when it comes to facilities. If you want to go outside of facilities, feel free to do so. But what are some future trends that you see 2025 and beyond?
For 2025 and beyond, I think trend wise, again, going back to technology and AI and it continuing, embedding itself through what platforms we're going to start to use more and more. I believe and I feel from the maintenance aspect, along with not just the maintenance side, but just the industry in a whole, the AI platforms coming across, utilizing, advancing in instructors or things of that nature and how to teach. Me as a proctor and a CPO instructor, in a sense, could part of that job or part of my position be, taken because they're using bots in certain aspects? Yeah, it can, but again, that's why I say where you need to invest into it to learn more about it so that you can also still be tied in with it and somehow. But I do think that the trends are going to continue with the information age as we continue to grow more and more. Technology is just going to be taking even in more and more, as far as from robots and things of that nature, going in. Furthermore, I think things are going to be tested as well to see what can be fixed. I still feel the human element is still going to need to be there in order to fix things and go through certain things. But again, in the future, I think that there's going to be AI platforms or things of that nature where it can be, a work order comes through, it's vetted, it's read, and said, these are the things that you need to check. And then it kind of goes there. And if we invest in it, it still builds upon us. And that's kind of the area that I feel that we're going to be going on into 2025 and then into the future is, again, a big proponent of technology and property technology, whether it's from leasing all the way into the maintenance.
Jose, it's been great chatting with you today. Thank you for making time to be with me, to be with our audience here today. What are some final thoughts? Maybe you wish to, answer a question that, you wish I would have asked, I didn't, or any final thoughts to wrap up this conversation?
Final thoughts really is those one again. I want to thank you. We've talked and we've emailed before, just in advocating for maintenance, just in general. I think what you're doing is what we've talked about. Some of the questions that you've asked. How do we sell our industry, right, to make it more desirable and making a career into this? So again, advocating, I think, is great what you're doing and continuing to do these things for those that are at the site level. What I say is take your blinders off. Don't think that you're going to be stuck on site. As long as you're investing in yourself, your community, your team, and reach out to, if you have an interest in becoming a regional maintenance manager, or a construction manager, a renovations manager. Heck, if you want to go for maintenance and want to learn about the office and going over into the management side, start asking, start going over there and start getting with those that are already in those positions to see if that's the direction you want. Encourage those that are outside, of this industry, because again, like you said, as a whole, I think we're hurting and there's shortages across everywhere, right? And people are trying new things. If you know a good salesperson, great. If you know somebody that's really great with their hands, let them know about our industry, the opportunities that are out there. And one big thing that I want to leave off is that, in the multifamily industry, especially from the maintenance perspective and from the leasing side, as you've kind of heard my story, I've done everything from doing side jobs, from whether it's replacing a toilet, installing a toilet, doing tile work, doing backsplash work, all this maintenance stuff, to where I've even invested and learned about wholesaling and have become an investor for some time in my career in doing this. So there's a lot of opportunities that's out there. So capitalize on that opportunity that is in front of you and learn as much as you can and just continue to learn, because if you're not learning, you're not growing is the way I see it. And that's what was, they used to tell me in the Marine Corps, you're not learning, you're not growing. And you become stagnant, you get comfortable. I always try to not stay comfortable, because again, one thing that the Marine Corps would say, when you leave the wire and you're going into Fallujah, you're leaving your safe base or you're leaving that line, it used to be a huge sign that would say complacency kills. Literally, it does, and it can when you get lazy or if you get comfortable and you think this is the 100th GFI that I replaced, and you think which one's the line and which one's the load, and because you're comfortable and you've been doing this for years, you decide to not grab that multimeter just to double check. You can put yourself and somebody else in another situation that you don't want to be in. So, don't get comfortable and just continue to learn and grow.
Once again, thank you. Great conversation. Great having you on. Everybody, want to thank you all for watching us today. Thank our sponsors from Kairos and Upwork for making this podcast possible. This is another episode of Masters of Maintenance. I'm Adrian Danila, your host, signing off right here. See you on the next episode. Take care.